So we haven't done enough of these YouTube lives. We've been doing some lives over on TikTok, but decided to share some stuff with you guys out there. So hopefully we get a few people joining to see what we're working on today, which is this. So this is James's 1965 Fastback Mustang. It's been in the family for a long time, and by that I mean it's been his for a long time. And it's kind of an animal, to be completely honest. So it's going through its latest iteration. And as you can see over my shoulder there, that's kind of a beefy supercharger. So we're basically continuing to chip away at this thing. And the goal is to get it road ready for the Street Rod Nationals later this year. So yeah, basically today we're chipping away on the fuel system and essentially the AN fittings, everything like that. We're running it really neat and tidy because as you can see, it's a really nicely done build. Everything's very clean and the idea is that we're trying to, keep that theme throughout the whole car, so it's, high quality build from front to back. So let me see if I can flip this camera around here. All right, there we go. So I'm gonna show you guys what you want to see. So this is the motor. It's 351 based, it's 408 cubic inch stroker, and as you can see, we've got a Mondo supercharger here. It's a Novi 2000 if I'm correct. Is that right? V7 YSI, never mind, I was misspeaking, so not a puny Novi 2000. Yeah, so this thing is gonna be an absolute beast, honestly. I had the pleasure of enjoying this vehicle in its naturally aspirated state, and it was already very fast. And with the addition of a supercharger, honestly, it's going to be slightly terrifying. So yeah, give you a little bit more of a tour because we're kind of setting some stuff up here, but basically not only do we have the fantastic power plant here, this car is quite well set up throughout, and again, it's disassembled right now as we're doing some of the wiring and everything, but here we go. Got full 4-link and coilovers underneath, and T56 Magnum 6-speed, so it'll definitely handle the power and be very fun to drive, and just generally a very pretty car. So as you can see, we've kind of been pulling out the old wiring from the trunk here as well, and we've got a new harness that's going in. So basically that'll be happening in the next week or so here. But yeah, she's a little bit stripped back, so we got a lot of work to do before December. But again, goal for today is fuel system. So it's a Holley Sniper EFI setup, and basically we've pretty much finished the lines from this bulkhead over here into the actual, I guess it's the throttle body of its EFI. And those pop out down here in the fender well, and we're gonna route them along and under, and there's gonna be a fuel filter right under here and a few other things. But it is, braided line front to back.
There's a fuel thing in the tank in the trunk.
Yeah, so not only is it braided line front to back, but it also has this pretty sweet in-tank fuel pump and pickup setup. And this thing was awesome. I mean, I remember when we installed it, it went in super easy. And it's just a really clean install for a fuel pump, the way it just drops in the tank like that. It's sealed up real nice, and honestly, I'm just a big fan of the design. I think it was an excellent design by Holley. And here, that's the part number right there if you guys are curious. It's the 12-134. And again, you can see that straight into braided lines that pop right through there, and then they run underneath the car all the way up to the front. And as we showed you a moment ago, they pop out up from here and come up through the fender here and out here into the Sniper. So it should absolutely be able to handle the fuel demands that this motor is going to demand, because it's 6.7 liters, 6.8 liters, something like that. and plus boost, so it is going to definitely need a strong fuel supply to keep up with the flow that this thing is going to be dealing with. But yeah, generally this thing is going to be a monster. So basically right now we're putting a new fitting on the on one of the lines here, and we're using these pretty handy little AN fitting installation tools. If you guys have never seen them, it's these guys right here. And if you've ever tried putting an AN fitting on over the braided line just by hand, you know how much of a nightmare it can be. And honestly, these things are a lifesaver. Normally you'd actually use them in a bench vise, but we found that, you know, with a little bit of Vaseline, you can actually basically install them by hand, and it seems to go pretty well. So yeah, it's been a very, very helpful tool, and I would highly recommend that if you're working with AN fittings yourself. But yeah, you know, the idea is we want this to be a clean, you know, kind of understated look as well. You'll notice it's not super bright and colorful. It doesn't have the crazy speed part look where it's like, oh man, everything's, you know, purple and blah, blah, blah. You know, you just pop the hood and you can tell it's all business. So yeah, as soon as we get that fitting on, that one is going to be running between this guy right here and down there where the fuel filter is going to be installed. And the two lines obviously is the feed and the return, because we are dealing with EFI and kind of more modern style pump. The return is an important setup as well, because this thing is going to be pumping an absolute ton of fuel, and it's not always going to need that volume. So yeah, I don't know, is there anything I've missed so far that you want to talk about?
I think you can check out the brakes on it too. So it's
Yeah.
the Willwood kit on it.
Yeah, so this thing, well, first of all, these gorgeous wheels, by the way, from Vintage Wheelworks, and I am a huge, huge fan of these. But we have Willwood 6-piston front calipers here, and absolutely monster discs. And then it's also Willwoods in the rear, full coilovers, 4-link. Yeah, this thing is going to actually drive extremely, extremely well for its age. And honestly, you know, the kit, it was a decent amount of money, but for the actual braking performance you get, I think it's worth every penny. And honestly, the big deal I would say as well is, you know, if you guys like this car, we've got some more videos that we're going to be posting on this on the channel. This is going to start to pop up on our YouTube channel a lot more. So if you haven't already, consider following, because we'll start to be doing more like kind of build and project videos on this thing. Right now we've got a lot of content on like the Chevy that I have. We've got some content on the Jags, but this Mustang is going to start making some more appearances on the channel. So if you're a fan of Mustangs, if you're a fan of fastbacks like this, definitely worth following along, because there's going to be an exciting first start video where you get to hear this freaking thing running, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot of fun with this beast. And it's just a matter of a month or so, and she should be back on the road and doing her shakedowns. And then again, by the end of the year, we're hoping to take both this and the 59 Chevy out to the Street Rod Nationals, and they'll be kind of showcased out there. So for anyone that's in the you know, southeast area of the states, you're welcome to come visit us at the Street Rod Nationals as well. You'll see us out there, and you know, obviously you can ask away any questions you have about the cars or crawl all over them. But yeah, this thing is kind of jaw-dropping, if I'm honest. I'm used to my small little 305 cubic inch Chevy boat anchor motor, and this is just a whole different breed. So, you got any questions about the car or anything? Let us know in the comments. Let me see if there's been any comments. None so far, but don't hesitate to ask away if anyone wants to know anything about this, anything about the build, specs, history, whatever. We are happy to share. Basically just kind of bringing you guys along for, you know, for the ride as we work on this thing. And while he's threading that on, we are super excited that we are actually in our very first actual workshop space. this has been a game changer for us. I mean, since we were kids working on our first cars, both of us, it's been, driveways, when we're lucky, maybe a garage. But yeah, I mean, most of my stuff had been done up on my driveway up until, well, I mean, geez, yesterday I was still working on my driveway. But we recently secured this workshop space. As you can see, we've got a lift installed, everything, and it is honestly tough to fathom how much this helps with what we're doing. As far as what's on the lift, so we have a Porsche 928 up top there, and this is a second-gen Dodge Viper under the cover down there. Also cars that you'll be seeing more of on the channel as well, which, they are both extremely cool in their own right. And, you don't see them as much because they're actually extremely well-sorted vehicles that really don't need as much work and service as our other ones. We tend to give a lot of attention to the cars that are in need of, yeah, exactly, broken, right? In need of repairs or upgrades or whatever, so. But yeah, so how'd that fitting go? Did it?
Yeah, it's in.
Sweet. So now what, fuel filter? Or?
Maybe hook up the... Yeah, so just finish the return line.
Okay. So, oh yeah, because we got to get the fitting on the small guy there. All right. Yeah, so that's the fuel return that he's pulling off. And basically, we need to get the actual AN fitting on that. And so that'll complete that line, which is exciting. That's all of the engine bay fuel system basically in. And it just needs that one AN there. And then we're pretty close on the inner fender stuff here. The lines are already run right about where my finger is. They're just sitting on the ground so you can't see them. But when we lift them up, they stop right at the bottom of the car there. So these lines will basically be connecting right at that point. And it's cool. It adds a nice amount of serviceability to the system as well, without too many connection points. Because obviously, when you're dealing with liquids and air, connection points are possible leak and failure points. So you want a balance of not having too many of those. But yeah, if you got any questions, throw them in the comments. Obviously, we're happy to answer. And one thing we have learned on this car, so all of the fuel lines that were originally in this were the braided stainless lines from front to back. And on this round, we do have the braided stainless underneath, but we've gone with the braided nylon, which also has kind of like the stainless fibers in it, I think, a little bit as well, right? But yeah, there you go. Yep, so you can see that it is still reinforced the same way, but having the braided nylon on the outside, they are so much easier to work with. So if you're considering going with a braided line like this, it's night and day. I mean, how much less of a nightmare it is to work with the nylon ones than the steel ones. And also, you don't stab your fingers on the sharp freaking wires, and oh my God, it's been a game changer. So definitely something to consider. So while he's working on that, look at the size of that drive pulley for the supercharger. So obviously a larger drive pulley and a smaller blower pulley will make for a higher RPM on the actual blower itself, creating more boost. So that drive pulley will absolutely achieve any RPM you could possibly want. So probably going to start with a bigger pulley on the blower just to get a more reasonable amount of boost. What were you thinking to start with, like 6, 8 PSI, something like that? Yeah, so just to start with, we're thinking about 8 PSI, just to make sure everything runs happy, make sure the EFI can keep up and it's able to kind of figure itself out under boost. And then after that, it's pretty easy to, basically just swap out this pulley for a smaller one, and you can really start to crank up the boost. And this will feed as much as you could possibly want into this motor. So, I mean, the YSI is just an absolute monster of a supercharger. And for perspective, I have a decent sized hand, so like I do not have small hands. And you can just see, let me see if I can get a perspective on how big this snail shell is here. So right there, like, yeah, it's gonna be tough to show you, but I got a big hand, and that is a huge blower. And especially, again, when you're feeding a near 7-liter V8 with that much boost. I mean, we're projecting 750, 800 comfortably in a car that weighs, what do you think, 2750 after all said and done? So, yeah, power to weight ratio on this thing is well into supercar territory, except you're in a 1960s platform, so it's just absolutely terrifying. And so while he's working underneath the car, because it's going to be a little tough to show, so that little handle poking up right there, that's from the T56 Magnum. So that was another upgrade that we made recently. This used to have, I think, a world-class T5 in it, which was, you know, solid transmission, obviously 5-speed, and it handled the power naturally aspirated, but, you know, the amount of extra oomph that this thing's going to have, it made sense to move to a stronger transmission. And honestly, this car does see regular road use once it's running, so having that, you know, longer overdrive as well is nice with the 6-speed. And I guess the Magnum that you got, is it the closer ratio one?
Yeah, it's the close ratio.
Okay, so yeah, it's also the close ratio, so instead of having like the 2 super long overdrives, it just has the lower, I guess it's 1st through 4th, right? They're closer packed.
I think all of them are. Yeah, that overdrive is less as well.
Yeah, do you need me to grab this? Okay, cool. I'm gonna be that cameraman that's just, you know, standing around not helping while he struggles.
Did you, I don't know if you could get any footage of the full length as well.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if you guys want, let's show you the 4-link in the rear here, because, you know, fuel lines are only so interesting, so let me crawl around on the ground for a second here. All right, so underneath here, this was one of the more exciting upgrades as well. I mean, geez, just look at how freaking clean this thing is underneath.
Total control products.
So, okay, so yeah, Total Control Products kit for the 4-link, and it was, you know, kind of installed with professional help, I'll say. We have a friend who is an extremely good welder, and basically James and that welder worked together on getting the 4-link installed, and it allowed for correction of a lot of like the geometry and stuff, to where it actually is really beautifully set up now. And obviously we have adjustable coilovers in the rear, which is going to be extremely handy when it comes time to actually dialing this thing in to handle launches and you name it. We got a rear sway bar there, which obviously on a build as nice as this kind of goes without saying. And one of the other things on this round, we've actually shortened the exhaust as well. So these used to come all the way out the back, and we've gone with just turn downs right off of the muffler. Obviously it's a full 3-inch exhaust, stainless from front to back, long tubes, etc. So that's going to probably add a bit of extra bark to this thing on its first fire up. And again, there's those beautiful vintage Wheelworks wheels. And what is that design based off of, the vintage Wheelworks one?
67 GT500.
Okay, so yeah, for anyone...
17-inch.
Okay, so it's like a 17-inch version of a 67 GT500 wheel. And I mean, they're just absolutely gorgeous on this car, and they fit the body so well. And honestly, a 17 on a car as small as this is plenty big enough. I mean, you know, I see people put bigger wheels on them, but personally I don't think it needs it. It still lets you run a decent amount of tire. So I will say it again for anyone that's joined us recently. We're going to be doing some more videos of this car as well on the actual channel itself. So if you haven't followed yet, it's worth just hopping over and clicking that follow button, because you will be seeing some more content. And in the very near future, there's going to be like a first start, some, you know, initial shakedowns, and then obviously you'll see us out at the Street Rod Nationals. We'll post videos of that too. And honestly, with something that makes as much power as this, you can imagine that there's going to be some pretty fun videos that come out of this thing as well. Yeah, there you go. I mean, so again, we've got a Viper sitting under that cover, and James made a good point of it would be kind of a fun test to see this thing running against that thing, and maybe do a few different runs, right? Try a standstill pull, you know, maybe see on the highway what they do. Honestly, as capable as that Viper is, I think it's probably going to have met its match with this thing, but you never know. The Viper definitely has an aerodynamic advantage, I would say. It's a very low-slung, very slippery car. But this thing ain't no slouch. So if you guys got any questions or anything, anyone that's watching have any, stuff you want us to elaborate on or parts of the car you specifically want to see, don't hesitate to throw it in the comments or I guess in the chat. Obviously, we are more than happy to oblige. And we are on other social medias as well. So we are on Instagram and TikTok. And, we try and post content on all of them. Honestly, Instagram has kind of frustrated me a little bit. They been working on that one for years. So, I post on there, but the best content is on YouTube here and also over on the TikTok. TikTok, we have over 17,000 followers and growing really fast. We post a lot of fun stuff over there. And, again, that's where you can find us on all of them. And this car will be making some more appearances on both of those other channels as well. But, the YouTube is where we're trying to regain our focus and start to bring more content back out this way with some of these cooler cars, because I know it's been a lot of service videos and stuff like that recently. Like most content creators, we've got our own personal lives with a ton of stuff going on, but we're actually finally wrapping up a lot of that and are able to kind of get back into some of the exciting stuff again, like this. And the other nice thing about having a shop space like this is that, got shade, got the fans going, and some music. Nice, I guess this is a Moby mix. And it's kind of a nice place to be while you're working on a car. So this is the return line that he's putting in right now for the Sniper. And oh yeah, threading that.
Oh.
So did you just cut that one to length, or?
No, I'm just putting this back. I'm building the piece that goes in the fender, actually.
Oh, okay, got it. So we're working on the underside piece, I see.
I like to keep these in place so I don't lose them and they take the shape they're supposed to,
Yep, that makes sense.
That way while it's sitting, it's at least holding the shape that we're going to put it.
Yep. Yeah, so essentially, he makes a good point. Anytime you're working with a line like this, if you let it sit in place as to where it's going to live, it's more likely to kind of naturally take the shape of where it's supposed to the longer it sits there. So if you just leave it on a workbench flat and straight, then basically, it'll end up, kind of fighting you a little bit when you go to put it on. But if you leave it in situ, it'll actually kind of naturally want to take that shape, and when you go to work with it, it gets a little bit easier. So here you can see these are the original fuel lines. You can see they're a little grubby because they've actually been under the car for a while, and the car saw a lot of road use with those on there. Oh, one other fantastic thing, you probably noticed that this car is actually on wheel dollies. And if you have a decent floor surface like this, those things are a freaking game changer. Like the ability to roll the car back and forward, and kind of position it where we need it has been absolutely life-changing, rather than trying to, push and roll the car and use the steering wheel to position it. With this, we could push it dead sideways, any direction we need, and it just goes where we need it to. And it also gives us a little bit of elevation off the ground, so there's a lot of little stuff under the car where we don't actually have to jack the car up to work on it. So that has been a nice perk, I'll say. So that's the master cylinder for the Willwood brakes, and you can see right here, this is the hydraulic clutch. This is the reservoir for it, which we still need to mount, but it is roughly where it's going to go. It just needs a couple little rib nuts in the firewall there, and that will be all set. And then you've got your blow-proof bell housing. So that's actually a proper rated bell housing, which will survive an exploding clutch. God forbid that happens, but you definitely don't want to have a cheap bell housing if it does, because that's how you end up with shrapnel coming up through your floorboards. And especially when you start making, higher horsepower builds, that does become a bit more of a reality that you have to deal with, of, you know, parts failing spectacularly. So we've been going for 25 minutes now. And yeah, mostly the, you know, got some decent progress going on the fuel lines. I guess he's working on cutting this one right now. We found that a stripe of tape and a Dremel are a very good way to do this. There we go. So the tape basically helps keep the fibers together. It stops them from kind of splaying out when you cut them. And the Dremel does a really nice job of making a clean cut through all the different types of material. And it also gets through like the metal reinforcement nice and easy. And you know, basically it just makes an all-around clean cut pretty quickly and easily, versus maybe trying to use more of like a blade or something like that, where you might end up kind of crushing the line, or, you know, other stuff that's less than ideal. So that's been our method, and it seems to be working. You can see we're still kind of getting moved in here, so there's a little bit of cleanup that's still needed, but we're going through box by box. James just put away another box today, so
Try and do some car work and some cleanup every time we come here.
exactly. Yep.
That's why we've got the banner up.
Yeah, exactly. Last time we were here, that was a must. It was decided to get our brand logo up there, and that way when we get here, it's a little reminder of what we're working towards. And on that same note, over here, this sign has been around for quite some time, and this is actual steel, and very purposely has just been left to the elements to age naturally. And yeah, I put these together. There's two of those in existence, and yep, put those together several years ago in anticipation of us having some cool spaces like this to hang them in, and lo and behold, here we are. So these are the original Viper wheels as well. And you might be wondering, okay, well, why are the original Viper wheels stacked up over here, and what's on the Viper if those are over there? So one of the little modifications that James made to the Viper is an upgrade to Gen 5 wheels, and not just any Gen 5 wheel, but what's the thing? So from the launch edition, and that means they're polished, correct?
Yeah, and the style.
Yeah, okay. So basically, this is the launch edition wheel from the Gen 5 Viper, and it is absolutely gorgeous. So again, you can see why he upgraded to these instead of the stock ones over there, which, don't get me wrong, the stock GTS wheels are very cool, but those have a bigger tire on them as well, right?
355.
Yeah, so those Gen 5 wheels run 355s in the rear compared to 335s, I think, on the Gen 2 wheel, which, you know, honestly, on a car that light with that much power, having extra tire is always a good thing.
No traction control.
Yeah, no traction control, no driver assists. Much like this thing, honestly. No traction control. I think about the most advanced thing on this is that it has a rev limiter now, thanks to the MSD, right?
It does have a rev limiter.
Yeah, so, you know, you at least have that perk, but other than a rev limiter, this thing is manual everything, and that's just the way we like it. The Porsche, on the other hand, the Porsche, is, that's the bougie car. That's the one that has every creature comfort known to man, including separate rear AC, which I found to be fascinating. And yeah, so 1991, and it has a separate rear air conditioner in it, even though you can barely fit in the back seats. Not the worst back seats that we've ever had, by the way, but pretty rough.
Definitely cozy.
Yeah, kids only is a great method because I tried sitting back there and my head was definitely pressed against the rear glass. Like when this thing had back seats, the back seats in this were a lot more functional than they were in the Porsche. But this no longer runs back seats. He actually has the delete, which is these two panels right here. So that little flop down there basically it's on a hinge and it lets you cover that up. But that's allowed him to run some of the MSD ignition and things like that inside the car and make them accessible and serviceable because, it is somewhat of a race car, but it's also somewhat of a frequent use, daily type setup. So you want it to actually be easy to maintain. So, yeah, it's been a long-standing build, but it's finally on the home stretch of what the original vision was. And it's been through many, many iterations to get here. How long have you had this thing now?
13 years.
13 years. So James has had this car for 13 years. And honestly, this motor you've had for...
Longer.
Yeah, because it was in the coupe, right?
Yes, probably had the engine, like the short block for, at least 15.
Yeah, so the short block of this, essentially, this was in a 65 coupe, white one with red interior, and that was its first iteration, naturally aspirated, and much simpler build, honestly. The coupe was very much just like, you were in college at the time, right? So it was done on a budget, and basically the motor was built extremely well, kind of like all the right parts, no expense spared where it mattered, but the rest of the car was done, on a shoestring budget. Like most things, all the work was done ourselves, and I say that by James at the time because he was the only guy working on the thing pretty much. But he always had the vision for the motor of it eventually being a supercharged build, and it may have taken over a decade, but we're here. I mean, it literally, there's a supercharger bolted to it right now, and this fuel system we're putting in and the EFI are all designed to support this and make this work. And again, I mean, the motor, as much as it was a monster when it was in the coupe, it was actually built lower compression, knowing the boost was coming. So knowing how exciting it was, even naturally aspirated, I'm very terrified to see what this thing will do throwing down 8 pounds and then eventually more. Because this thing was an animal even on 9-to-1. And I guess this thing is going to be built just to run 93, right?
Yeah, I think so. Although we found out that the gas station around the corner here sells 110.
Oh yeah.
So we may do a spicy tune on it as well.
Yeah, maybe we'll do one of those videos where once this thing's running, if we can get enough people to share it and like it and whatever, we'll do a race gas tune and run it on 110 and see what it does. Hopefully it retains all of its pistons.
Yeah, we'll keep all the rods out of orbit.
Yeah. But initially here again, even on a mild tune, even with 8 pounds, this thing's going to be an absolute animal. There's just kind of no way to boost a well-made motor like this and not make scary amounts of power. I mean, even if you screw everything up, it'll be deep into the 600 horsepower range.
Should do.
Yeah, without even blinking, and then,
Basically 500 naturally aspirated.
Yep.
With not a good tune on it.
Right. So, yeah, if you were...
I won't say it tunes itself, but it'll at least do a bass tune.
Yeah.
It's better than any bass tune you just get out of the car.
Right. So yeah, and then again, the EFI being a smart system, theoretically it should be able to kind of figure itself out where, we were kind of trying to manually do all of that before. And then, yeah, I mean, add boost on this much displacement, you'd have to really screw up to get less than 100 horsepower out of a blower this big.
The goal is like 650 wheel when it's all dialed in, so it's very streetable still.
Yeah.
Reliable.
Yeah, very streetable 650 wheel in a 2,700 pound car. Reliable, I agree with. I think it will very much be reliable. And honestly, you don't have this thing built on like a razor's edge where everything's like gonna beat you to death in the suspension and all that. But yeah, it's definitely gonna be a car that you have to pay attention while you're driving. It is not gonna be one of these, you know, you can just mash the gas and it'll just figure it out for you type of builds. So I tried to show this a moment ago. Let's see if I can get it to focus here. But I cannot tell you how much of a giggle it gives me that in the blower right here it says race. Like, yeah, so there you go, V7 YSI. And yeah, that tells you something about the spec of blower that he went for. Like when Vortec themselves are saying like, yeah, this is probably not the one you would normally put on a street car. You know, this is more for something that's going to go down a drag strip. That's kind of a fun thing. So this little guy right here is the hat for the EFI throttle body. You know, I keep wanting to call it a carburetor, but it's not a carburetor. And basically, I think the initial build, the hat's just going to be on here, and it's just literally going to go straight in there. It's just, boop, you know, and boost the air goes in there, and, you know, explosions happen and happiness noises come out the back. And then eventually, the build after this will be intercooled. So pretty quickly, once everything's dialed in and we're happy with it, to crank the boost up, it makes sense to intercool the setup. There's plenty of space in the front bumper, because you have like the Terlingua style, right? Yeah, so GT350R front bumper, which has a lot more room for an intercooler down front, which obviously will let you run higher boosts, a little more stable. So with that, basically, you know, we'll probably have to clock the blower differently. There's going to be some plumbing voodoo magic that happens to kick it out here and around and then back in, at which point we'll probably change the blower hat to come this way and let the basically, you know, all the intake and everything will come up from this side, so the intercooler will do its job. But for the initial build, we're just going as direct of a route as possible, and literally it's just gonna come straight into the EFI there. So any questions from what you guys have seen so far? Obviously we're happy to answer. Just throw them in the chat. And we are obviously happy to... Oh, I am so sorry, guys. I have literally been waiting for stuff to pop up on the chat. Yeah, basically the the chat's been hidden this whole time. I'm sitting here like, man, no one's commenting, and the chat has been hidden. So let's see. Yeah, this thing is going to be a monster for sure. Hey, what's up, Bryce? I hope you're still on here, man. Sorry. So yeah, basically, it's kind of a combination of both. This is mostly going to be a street car in the sense of he wants to build it in such a way that he can take it anywhere and everywhere that he wants, you know, and it will just get him there, right? I mean, jump on the highway, take it to a show, you know, take it down to the Keys or something like that, and it'll do it. Versus, you know, it's going to be capable enough at the drag strip, but you'll notice, I mean, we're still running basically the biggest tire we can possibly get under here without like mini tubbing or, you know, really hacking up the rear. You know, if we wanted to go more of a drag focused build, then essentially in a more drag focused build, you would mini tub it, you'd put a much wider tire on the rear. You'd probably set build, you would mini tub it, you'd put a much wider tire on the rear. You'd probably set up the rear end a little differently, but this is actually set more for street. And honestly, with the 6-speed, I mean, it'll even be quite competent on the highway, which could be a lot of fun because, you know, we hear that some people in our area like to do some things on some of the bridges around here. You know, not that we do some things on some of the bridges around here. You know, not that we would ever get involved in anything like that, but yeah, but you know, in Mexico, exactly. I hear in Mexico and some of the bridges in Mexico, they like to do some interesting stuff, and this thing could potentially be quite a lot of fun on a on a bridge in Mexico. And we would be happy to bring back some footage from Mexico when we're experimenting on some of the bridges there. So it'll probably be one of the more beastly early fastbacks that you guys have ever seen, you know. And thanks, Tom. Yeah, welcome to the live. You know, it feels weird being on this side of the camera, Tom. I'm used to being on the other side and watching you on your lives. And yeah, it's awesome to have you checking us out. Feel free to give me a critique later because, you know, it's an amateur hour here.
Everyone should check out this channel too.
Yeah, actually, and while we're at it, if you haven't already, you should check out Tom D NYC. Basically the most knowledgeable person that I have ever seen when it comes to the history of, actually now not only New York City, a lot of it's New York City, but also areas in Florida and some other states as well. I've been very impressed. So if you guys like history and seeing kind of like you know, tours of the different areas and stuff, Tom D NYC is awesome, and definitely worth checking out. And if you like car stuff, follow our channel. Seriously, the obviously, you know, got a few of you on here right now watching us kind of tinkering on the Mustang, but I would say, you know, if you want to see more in-depth builds and some of the more good content that's going to come out, following is the way to go, because you'll be able to actually get a notification, especially if you hit the little bell icon. And basically you'll see when we release videos of this thing, and you'll know that we have this beast running. So Tom, how would we know if you're blushing behind the beard? So I'm trying to find a way of giving you a glamorous shot of James on the ground here working on the car. Look at that. Thank you, Terrence. Yeah, this thing, again, our goal is to have this at the Street Rod Nationals in December. So basically the idea is this thing's got to be up and running hopefully in the next couple of months here. And then that will basically let us be on the shakedown process in plenty of time to make sure that it all, you know, runs smooth, and you know, all of the gremlins are worked out to where when it comes time to drive this thing up to the show near us, that basically we can really work on, you know, or sorry, we can really have a reliable vehicle to get us out there. And then, yeah, and back. Yeah, exactly. And the goal is to have both this and the 59 Bel Air out at the Street Rod Nationals this year. But the difference is, this thing is an absolute animal. You know, 59's a fun cruiser. This is, you know, the frickin' Demon Slayer. Maybe in a literal sense, actually, that would be a fun race. You know, we happen to know a guy with a demon.
You know someone.
Yeah, might have to give Klaus a nudge. Yeah, he's actually an extremely talented drag racer with a lot of practice. So yeah, we would be coming in rusty at best with a minimally tested, low boost built one of these. But you know what? That would make for a good video, actually. I think that would be some interesting car content for the car tube community, to see this thing and see if it can hang with the Demon. I guess we'll have to go to Bradenton.
Yeah.
Because I really think this thing would be better suited, both of them honestly would be better suited at a quarter mile.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Let it stretch its legs. And his Demon's auto, right?
Yeah.
So he'll have consistency on his side as well. All right, so what he's holding right there is the inline fuel filter. And basically you can see that thing is absolutely massive. But basically that is on the feed line. And you can see the direction that these are going to get routed, so they're tucked up and safe. But basically, yeah, that inline fuel filter is going to be mounted to the little kind of step panel there in the footwell. We were talking about it earlier, but we're probably going to put some riv nuts in there. And I do think that's a good kind of professional way to install those. And then obviously we'll be running a couple of clamps to secure those lines and make sure that they are not flopping all over the place and seeing unnecessary wear and tear. And all of it is to feed this beast. And to give you an idea, by the way, so this is a 351 based motor, which obviously never came in this car, right? So the 64.5, 65, 66, that was obviously traditionally a 289 powered vehicle, and that's physically a much smaller engine. So the 351 while still a small block, is a very large small block in comparison. And I mean, it's long tubes, and you can just see like how tightly packed this thing is. And like most people running, challenging long tube setups, there's definitely been some clearancing done. So like this tube here, like on this primary, we had to clearance for the big bolt that's coming through for the control arm and the suspension there. The rear ones are fine, but again, I mean, you can see, and I think on this side is where we really had to do some massaging. Yeah, this guy right here, we had to kind of create a curve in that primary to match the curve on this. And it was all done extremely professionally. So like you can just see, look at the beautiful way that curve follows that line. And it was, like I said, I mean, the most professional job ever. I think it was a 5-pound sledgehammer and a couple of beers. And voila, they were clearanced and we got them in. But I will say that was a surreal day to be able to fit this motor with long tubes in this engine bay and actually have it clear with enough room for when it's running. It's not going to touch or vibrate against anything. I mean, that is a lot of engine to fit in such a small car. So let's see if there's anything new in the chat. I still can't believe that I didn't know how to pull the chat up on this, so I do apologize. Yeah, exactly. That means we got to do more lives so we can get a little more practiced.
Maybe each time we're out here we'll go live.
That's true, yeah. What do you guys think? I think maybe each time we come out to the shop here, which is so far most weekends at least, and potentially occasionally a weekday evening, maybe we'll go live and let you guys join along. Most of the content will be on the Mustang for the near future, and then pretty soon we'll actually have the XJR up here as well, and we'll be pulling the cylinder heads off of the XJR, doing a bit of a boost upgrade on that. We're putting stronger head gaskets on and better head bolts as well, and a couple other little things so that it'll handle the increased boost that I have thrown at it a little better. Because, like all of our cars, I couldn't leave well enough alone, so I put a smaller pulley on it. And boy, is it tons of fun, but boy, did it not like it. So, what's the next step?
On this, I'm going to cut another fuel line.
All right, so we're about to cut the next fuel line, and this is for the feed side, right?
Yep, supply line.
So, very cool. Yeah, so the supply line that's going to connect that filter down there to this fitting up here, and then boop, through there into that monster right there. You already have the length marked and everything?
We'll do.
Sweet.
Okay, we got $50 on.
Look at that. That's how you know you're professional. And I'm wearing my safety squints.
You're lucky. You don't even have your sunglasses on, but you're behind the camera.
Right. Yeah, my eyelids are OSHA approved. Yeah, the theory is if if anything goes wrong with that cutoff wheel, it'll hit my phone, not my eyeballs. So basically, once this line is done, that kind of completes the fuel system. Essentially,
on the one fitting.
Yeah, there's one fitting that we're still waiting on, and basically with that, the fuel system from front to back on this thing is complete. So, obviously we'll have to go through and just double check, make sure everything's fully tight. But yeah, that's another system checked off on the car. The brakes are already done. Electrical is probably the next big thing on this.
Yep.
So once the fuel system is buttoned up,
We're waiting on the radiator.
yeah, oh that's right. Yeah, the radiator is out with a shop right now, and basically the inlet and outlet ports are being moved on it so that they better fit the layout of this engine bay, because it's an extremely nice radiator that will handle the high demands of this motor, but basically after putting the supercharger on and all of the new bits and bobs, it changed the inlet and outlet hose placement, and obviously
Like the drive system's like a Fox body Mustang now.
yeah, true.
So that's like why we're trying to make it full be Fox body.
Yep. So that is a good point. Yeah, I guess I forgot to mention this whole front end is basically off of a Fox body Mustang, and The nice thing is that gives you access to parts. It gives you, kind of easier service and maintenance because it's a more common setup. So by adapting a Fox body, bracket system and layout to the front of this, anytime he's dealing with motor back, it's your standard 351 parts or 408 parts if it's more internal related, and then anything here forward is basically Fox body parts. So rather than trying to fiddle with stuff, he's able to also use relatively stock Fox body hoses by moving the inlet and outlet location on the radiator. And it just, again, for serviceability and parts, accessibility, it makes it a lot easier to just be able to buy a Fox Mustang upper hose and boom, it works, right? Versus having to get some weird one. And, I had to do that with my Chevy, honestly. I'm running like a big block car upper hose, a small block lower hose that I cut to length. And, it worked, but it was definitely a lot less fun to have to remember and log all of that information. Versus with this, it's like, all right, well, just, anything that's here forward is Fox body stuff, and anything that's here back is 351 stuff,
I don't know if it's visible how close the supercharger gets to the apron too.
Oh, yeah.
But that is the Fox body bracket.
Yeah, so you can see.
It's not touching though.
Yeah, yeah, you could get a feeler gauge in there, but yeah, that actually does not touch. And but yeah, to James's point, this is the Fox body stuff, and it still works. And that's one of my favorite things about older vehicles like this is that all the way up into like the 80s and 90s, there was a lot of similar parts still being used, both with Ford and with Chevy. So a lot of creative design houses and rednecks in their backyards figured out how everything could possibly go together and figured out what does work and what doesn't work. And thanks to the terrifying beauty of the internet, a lot of that information is now readily available for us to find. And you can figure out stuff like, oh yes, you can actually fit a YSI with this bracket setup in the engine bay of a 65 without having to hack it up too much.
Many of them have those.
Oh yeah. So, any other questions right now? He's working on putting that AN fitting on, obviously.
Yeah.
Using the proper wrenches and everything, because we are absolutely professionals. And the point of these wrenches, some of you probably already know this, and if you don't, we'll give you a quick education. They are made of aluminum, just like the actual fittings themselves, so they don't tear up the finish. Because if you use a regular wrench on these, you can actually tear up the anodized finish on these nice AN fittings. So if you ever see a car where you have like these, beautiful fittings and they're all scored up and beat up, it's because someone got impatient and was using the incorrect wrenches on them. Whereas by using the proper alloy wrenches, they stay all nice and perfect. And they also fit better, honestly. They actually grab the fitting really nicely. Whereas like a normal wrench, they're shaped just a little differently, so you might get a little more wiggle and play. And it's a very cool design. If you guys have never looked into how an AN fitting works and how they seal.
There's a few of them up there if you want to show people too.
Yeah, it's quite a creative thing. Let's see. So basically, this is what's inside the kind of male side of an AN fitting. And essentially, this taper right here goes inside of the rubber part of the AN line. And then as you're cranking down the outer sleeve that's on the kind of female side of it, it's basically, as you can see, right? So as you're cranking this down, it's basically drawing the rubber line over this taper and kind of flaring it and creating a stronger and tighter seal while also sort of pinching it. And if I'm correct, AN is what, aeronautical or something, or?
Yeah, it's like aerospace.
Yeah.
At least originally.
Yeah, so originally designed for kind of aerospace use, right? Which, if it's good enough for airplanes, I would like to think it's good enough for cars. So this is exciting. This is kind of the last piece of line right here. And essentially this is the feed line that comes from the filter and through the bulkhead there and into the throttle body. And I honestly can't blame James for going EFI on this, because I know blow-through carburetors can sometimes be a challenge to work with. I hear that they can be a bit of a nightmare, and these EFI systems are so advanced now that they deal with boost extremely well. and kind of they do a lot of the legwork for you. For an application like this, it's going to start every time. It's going to make more power easier. Everything else about the car is still old school. And it basically, barring the fact that it'll just start and run reliably, it'll act like a carbureted vehicle. So, I've tried every way I possibly can to hate on this thing, and I just can't. It's just too freaking good. So, unfortunately, I'm not able to be a curmudgeon about it. But if you guys have seen my 59, I am a staunch carburetor believer. So much so that I have 3 of them. Because, yeah, exactly. Because, one carburetor is not complicated enough. So I really need to just make sure I triple the fun. And that way, But actually, as much as everyone thinks tri-power setups are a nightmare to live with, it's been extremely good and really not that hard to work on.
Well, other than some clamps and stuff, that's the lines at least.
Yeah, so basically, this is generally the routing.
We'll tuck some of it up a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, once we get the kind of P-clamps and stuff in there, it'll be secured to the body so it doesn't flail around. Not that you get too much of that with AN lines anyway. But, yeah, basically, other than the one fitting that we're missing right here, that is the fuel system front to back, basically complete. Just needs to be gone through and, like you said, clamped up and kind of tightened down just to make sure it's fully sealed. But that is a momentous occasion because, again, brakes fully done. The fuel system is now fully done, barring that little thing. And the clutch, right? The clutch is already...
It just needs to be bled.
Okay, so we just need to bleed the clutch. Yeah, so really that's probably coming soon as well, is bleeding the clutch and mounting the reservoir here. But then again, clutch is working. And then so really it is truly electrical, which you can see we've already kind of started pulling some of the old stuff out. I know that's probably super stressful to look at for some of you, but
we know what's going on.
yeah, exactly. I promise you, we know exactly what we're doing. But basically, because we're adding the EFI wiring to this, and there was some older wiring, a lot of it is not even used anymore. So we're kind of stripping a ton of this out, and we're just going to do a much cleaner install with just the wiring that's needed for this setup. And it's front to back going to be basically redone. And you can see the stuff that came out of the car. I mean, this was original to the car, and it's not the worst I've seen, but it's old. The risk of wires breaking and things like that just increases with age. So we have a new harness replacing that one in the rear of the car, which don't know exactly where we put it, but it's much nicer than this. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so this is the new harness that we'll be installing in its place, and this is basically just brand new, and it's designed to handle, all of the stuff that's at the back of the Mustang. So all your taillights, license plate lights, all the functions back there, and it's perfect and brand new. So you can see like all that rat's nest back there is going to come out, and basically you'll just have a clean wiring harness that comes in and across. You won't even see it, honestly. It'll be tucked away and hidden. And basically, yep, trunk floor goes in, and it'll look pretty stock, honestly. And that's the beauty of this drop-in pump, by the way, is it's so low profile that you can really just put a floor panel over this whole thing, and you'd have no idea that you have the higher capacity fuel tank with the big, huge monster pump. And I guess the pump also has the sender on it, right? For the fuel level, or no?
It uses the factory sender.
Oh, okay, so it still uses the factory one. So never mind, I lied. But basically, this whole setup will just tuck in and look pretty much factory. So really, I think the only thing that would give it away, other than that it sounds like an absolute monster, would probably be the roll bar. Because once this thing goes back together, we do have this roll bar for, a little bit of improved safety and a little bit of rigidity. So that's probably, that and the harnesses are, are the giveaway, because it does have 5-point harnesses on both sides. So yeah, and there'll probably be a helmet tucked away in there at some point as well. So, most people that would be a bit of a giveaway, but you never know. You might catch the occasional person who has no idea what they're looking at and really ruin their day. But this was a huge, huge breakthrough. Truly, again, every time you close out a system on a car like this, it is a milestone, because it lets you put more focus into the next system. And you know, again, this fuel system being 99% like it is, that is absolutely a momentous occasion. Yep. And that was cool, man. So we've been on this live for approaching an hour. In about 15 seconds, we'll be at 1 hour. And I appreciate everyone that's jumped on with us, because again, like, you know, you got to see the completion of this. And you can hopefully see that we're really trying to do it right, as far as using really high quality materials, routing it cleanly but efficiently, serviceability in mind. You know, just, this is not like a slapped together car. And sure, it's not going to be your $100,000 build like you'd see on some Motor Trend show, but it's absolutely one that's done by people who really give a crap and kind of actually know what we're doing now, because we've been doing this for a long time. So yeah, we'll probably be going live again next weekend. We will try and make this a habit of going live out here at the shop. And as we mentioned, this is going to be the car that's our focus for the coming weeks. So definitely do follow. That way you get a notification when we go live or when we release a video, because you'll get to see more progress on this thing as it happens. And pretty quickly here, the fenders are going back on. You'll see it all start to come together visually, which is some of the most exciting parts. And the most exciting day will be that first start. So if you haven't, definitely follow. Or I should say subscribe. Sorry, I'm mixing my channels up. Yeah, subscribe to the channel, because seeing that first start is going to be huge. I mean, that's going to be just an unbelievable day, because this thing hasn't run for nearly 9 years.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Getting up that way.
Yeah, with everything going on, it's approaching 9 years that this car has been in hibernation, and it's going to be epic when it comes back. It really, really is. And I don't use that word lightly. I know in this day and age where everything is awesome and epic and unbelievable, but truly just a fire-breathing, you know, boosted monster like this, and something as light as this vehicle, you're going to want to see it. That is for sure. So let me flip this camera around. I really appreciate you guys following along for this. Here, let me get James in the shot here. So we're going to sign off for today. But again, thank you guys so much for following along in the live. Please do subscribe to the channel if you didn't already. And to everyone that already is subscribed, we really appreciate it. Your support has been phenomenal. The channel has continued growing. If you haven't already, check us out over on TikTok and Instagram. TikTok's a little more fun because we have a little more fun on that channel. But genuinely, we really appreciate everyone. And to all of our people that came over from TikTok as well, thank you very much. We appreciate you jumping across the two platforms. And we hope more people come that way. So share us anywhere you can. Every little thing really helps, and we've been able to put out better and better content because of you guys. So thank you. We're going to sign off, and we'll see you on the next one. Woo!